This is a review of my 2020 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon. Spoiler alert, we sure love it. Now, also another thing about this Jeep is that we definitely purchased it with less extreme rock crawling in mind and with more of an overlanding type of experience in mind. Now, why I say that is because I've been 100% satisfied with the size and off-road capabilities that this Jeep has provided for us. So it's not too big. I feel like a full-size truck would be really big and just hard to get into tight spaces that we might want to get into. But having said that, a JL or something smaller may not have the cargo capacity that we're looking for. So for us in our family with 4 people and a dog, usually going out all of us together, this has provided adequate space while staying small enough to maintain some off-road capability and maneuverability. Of course, it's less capable and less maneuverable than its smaller counterpart, the JL, but I'm not so certain that we could carry the things that we would like to carry and bring some of those creature comforts that we would like to bring along with us and have that same experience that we can in this Gladiator. But also, my wife and children, they're not looking for the extreme off-road thrill that and the more off-road capability that a JL would offer us. And so I would say that if you're in that same boat with us, that you're willing to sacrifice just a little bit of off-road capability mostly in departure angle, turning radius. We talked a little bit about breakover angle there, but you know, if you're not doing the extreme stuff, I'm here to tell you it's not going to affect what you're doing. There's plenty of capability that's maintained with this Jeep while also giving you the ability to carry more cargo, bring those things that are going to keep your children entertained and satisfied as you try to do some of these off-road adventures. Rooftop tents or just chairs. 4 fold-up chairs in a JL, it's going to start to get tight when you bring all of your other stuff and firewood. And another thing about the half cab rack that we have gone with is that keeps the rooftop tent just that much lower compared to being on the top of a full height rack or on top of a Jeep JL, for example, where you've got that center of gravity up there just a little bit. So as you consider, should I get the Gladiator or should I get the JL, I would say if you're worried about cargo space at all, and if you're okay sacrificing a little bit of that off-road capability to have a little more creature comfort back in the backcountry, then by all means, the Gladiator is for you. As far as things that I love about this Jeep, the very first time I went and took the Gladiator for a test drive, I felt like I was going back to what was normal. It felt like coming home. The Jeep, although it's a 2020, it feels like a Jeep should feel, and yet it also feels like a modern vehicle. So many more creature comforts than your CJ or YJ or TJ might have, and yet it still feels like a Jeep. So for those Jeep lovers out there that maybe want something a little bit more refined, a few more creature comforts, but still want to drive a Jeep, this is the way to go. Go grab a new JL, go grab a Gladiator, and you're going to be nothing but pleased. Okay, the number one design flaw is that the switches for the windows, to put the windows up and down, is in the center. It's in front of the center console on the dash. Why in the world would you do that? Sometimes it's nice to be unique. Other times it is nice to conform. And every other car, let's say 99% of all other cars, have the window switch on the door. And that's where I reach for it every time I try to put the windows up and down. Now, people have told me, oh, well, your doors come off, so they need to put the switches in the dash. And I say that's just silly rationalization, silly logic. So, first off, I don't need the switches if the windows aren't there. The doors come off. Secondly, there are other electronic switches on the door. Third, it's not going to add any more weight to have a switch there. The glass, the motors, all of those things are already in the door. Also, they've made these doors aluminum to keep the weight down. So I would say effort has been made to keep the weight off. Adding a switch isn't going to add any substantial amount of weight. And come on, Jeep, let's put the switches back on the door where they are on most other cars. Some of the complaints that you might hear about with this Jeep are the low breakover angle and the low departure angle. What I have found as I use the Jeep is that the breakover angle isn't as bad as it looks. Now I would say that is the case with the lift and with the tires. Of course, in stock configuration it is fairly low. Now the departure angle also has not been as big of a factor as I had imagined. At first I thought, man, that bumper is going to be scraping on everything, and it hasn't been. Now the receiver hitch, that is what has been scraping on stuff, and in the future we will be doing an aftermarket bumper with an integrated receiver hitch up above the license plate bracket in an effort to bring the receiver hitch up and to get that out of the way of scraping as it comes off of rocks. We'll show you now on the back bumper some of the scrapes that we have acquired over the past year and a half. And as you can see, they're not many. Another thing that seems strikingly odd to me is the lack of power seats. I challenge you to find another 40, 50, 60,000 vehicle these days that doesn't have power controlled seats, and this Jeep certainly does not. It's not an option. It's not something you can choose, at least not for 2020. And I think they're just trying to cut costs and save on that. But I don't see any reason why there couldn't be power seats. There's plenty of electronics in this vehicle, in the dash, behind the back seat. There's a speaker. All of these things that would be exposed to weather that are, so I don't buy the argument that there's no power seats because they would be exposed to the weather when you took the top off or when you took the doors off. So come on, Jeep, let's put power seats in this vehicle like you'd find in most others. Another thing that really bothers me about the Gladiator is that anytime we are going uphill, the transmission will downshift and will stay in a much higher RPM range than it otherwise needs to. So we've got a hill right behind us here. We're going to go up and down a couple times and show you from in the cab how the transmission will downshift, RPMs will skyrocket, and engine noise also will be up a lot higher, guzzling more gas than it needs to. And then I can show you as I manually override the automatic transmission and shift into a higher gear that it'll maintain speed just fine. So why it wants to downshift and stay in the higher RPM range is beyond me. But the funny thing is that we find just the opposite happen on a downhill. As we go down the hill, it'll stay in high gears, and I don't get the benefit from any engine braking that would happen if it were in a lower gear. Okay, so here we go up this hill. It's not a terrible grade, but we'll just set our speed limit here, or our cruise control at 50 miles an hour. And as you can see, the RPMs are already up at 5,000. So let's not do the, okay, it downshifted, good. We're up 4,000, and I'm holding up 50. Okay, but I myself can go into 5th gear and keep it right up at 49, up at 50. I'm 1,000 RPMs lower, and the grade of the hill hasn't changed at all. So if I shift it right back into automatic, you can see it already through back into 4th gear, and we're up to 4,000 RPMs. And so it's not struggling to maintain the speed, but it's wanting to downshift for whatever reason. Now there could be a safety factor, right? Like if I need to quickly accelerate or something, I would have more torque available to me at that higher RPM, and I could get out of the way and whatever. But for fuel savings, for engine noise, for creature comforts, let's say, I'd prefer that it stayed down at lower RPMs. Here we go. For whatever reason, I've decided to stop and fill up. Probably, let's imagine this is the last gas station before we go on a long overland route. I had filled up not too long ago, haven't used much gas. As you can see, about 1/8 of a tank. So what we're going to do is we're going to gas up, and I'm going to show you what happens with that fuel gauge. Okay, so as we said before, we're just topping off. There it was, that's all it took. So let's top that off as much as we can. As much as we can here, and wait for some traffic to pass. Okay, you can see I can't get any more in there. Alright, now come watch what happens with the fuel gauge. Alright, I gotta readjust the camera here so that it's got a good exposure, and the fuel gauge has not moved at all. No difference. So if I were to leave on my trip, I would think that my fuel isn't full yet. And the question I have is, at what point is that going to autocorrect so that it's actually reflecting how full the tank is? What I found is that if I don't use at least 1/4 of a tank before I fill up, it will not show how full the tank actually is. And once again, at what point will that normalize? When it gets down to 1/2 a tank, do I actually have 1/2 a tank? Because right now, it's showing that I don't have a full tank. But as you saw at the pump, totally full. Couldn't get any more in. Tried as much as I could. And so the fuel gauge is misleading unless you use a lot. If you empty that fuel a lot, or the tank a lot, then when you fill it up, it will show full again. Okay, so with the fuel system, this is one of my other pet peeves. And that is, as I take this cap off right here, if I don't try my best to hook this little hook, then it will come off. So it takes so much effort to leave it here, and I just don't want it dangling and hitting the fender and scratching stuff up. The Jeep's going to get enough scratches as it is. I don't need more scratches from a silly little fuel cap. The common gripe you'll hear is the steering. A lot of people complain about the loose steering and how they don't like the feel of it, or it feels like the Jeep will wander around as you're driving, especially at freeway speeds and especially with larger tires. I didn't notice it so much with the stock tires. I did drive this Jeep, like I mentioned, for 6 months almost with in stock configuration, and at that point, to me, it just felt like a Jeep. To other people that are used to driving more modern, better refined vehicles, we'll say, they probably felt like it was taking a step back in time. And so that issue is very well known. What isn't well known is that there is a TSB, and Jeep will fix your steering box if you request it. I've heard that dealerships are reluctant to do it. I've also heard that there's a long waiting list, but it's not something Jeep offers, it's something you have to request. So you take your Gladiator or your new JL into the dealership, and they will change the aluminum gears in your steering box to steel ones, and that will tighten up your steering significantly. And now for some things that I really like. I really like on the tailgate a couple options that they've incorporated in the Jeep. I can open it here and watch as the tailgate falls slowly as it opens, and that is built in to the hinge section of the Jeep. Right down in here is built into the hinges, not into some sort of a gas strut like you would find on other vehicles. Also, there's an option here to close this, keep these cables back behind and have the tailgate stay so that it's only partially open, thus keeping your stuff secure and the tailgate partially closed. One of the best things about a Jeep is all of the aftermarket support. You can individualize your Jeep to have it fulfill the precise mission that you are searching for, whether it be rock crawling, whether it be overlanding, or whatever it is that you want your Jeep to do. There is aftermarket support for it, and personalization, and all of those things that you just can't find on other vehicles. It's very difficult to have the multiple lifts that you might want to encounter, long travel, or the other vehicles you may not be able to fit as large of tires as you would like. The Jeep is a blank slate that allows you to do whatever it is that you're wanting to do. I sure love the memories that we're able to create and how we're able to get out and explore nature and learn some history and spend time together with the family. And as always, we just enjoy getting out and enjoying the land of the free. And that's what we challenge each one of you to do, is get out and enjoy the land of the free. Thanks for watching.